So we have built a full testing framework right into SQL Tran to ensure that the business logic you had on the source database is perfectly mirrored in target database. Now, due to the fact that you will use SQL Tran to move something from a database on one architecture to a database of different architecture, that means that internals are different. So even if the translation is perfectly valid, sometimes you might get some differences, and if so, you want to know about it. So let's look at our test screen. I have created some tests for tables, some for views, some for procedures on one of our test databases that's designed to break, right? So there's something to show in these tests. And one thing we can do is I can right-click tables nodes and generate tests for all tables at once. The way we test tables is that we compare each table in source and target and make sure that they have exactly the same data. That's of course crucial if we want to test that actually views and procedures work correctly. Now, what are we comparing? We are comparing data and tables between our staging database, source staging and target staging database. So those are the databases that you need to set aside for the testing in SQL Tran. So if you go, I have created tests for all of the tables here. So if I click on the first one, it's green. The table is completely equivalent, but it has 0 records in source and 0 in target. All right, not very interesting. This one has 1 record. And now the third one, database log, is failing. Why is it failing our tests? Why do we have differences here? So if I click differences and I scroll and scroll, I get to the field which has a different value. I can actually click here to show just the differing columns to avoid scrolling among hundreds of columns perhaps. And now we can immediately see what the problem is. We have truncation because in source SQL database we have XML that can be very large, and in Fabric Warehouse we only have 8,000 characters to work with. So we have a truncation, and of course this means that this table database log probably shouldn't even end up in Fabric Warehouse, but if it does, this means that, okay, so we now know that this table is not exactly this, does not contain exactly the same data in source and target, which also means that other objects, depending on this table, will start to return incorrect values. So that's something we may want to pay some attention to. Now, if I click to the views here, I have some views failing, and it's exactly the same. We have detected some differences. Why did we detect differences? Because this view has 1,764 records in source database and it returns 0 records in target. Why is this? If you go into this view, I won't do this now. It's not important for this video, but it's because it references one table that has problems being translated to the target for unrelated reasons. So now we are also catching the views that are failing. Procedures are very different. Very, very interesting. Because the way we test procedures is we ensure that they are doing exactly the same thing by executing them and comparing that the affected tables contain exactly the same data after we run the procedure. So if we click the first procedure, we see, okay, this procedure is returning a data set, and actually I can just go quickly and see what does the procedure do. It returns select statement. All right, so it does exactly the same thing, and get department hierarchy is returning a different value here. If I click here, then we see, all right, database log, right? So again, this is the cause for this procedure not working as expected is because the tables in the source staging and target staging does not contain exact same data. So once we fix that and rerun the tests, this should automatically pass. And of course, SQL Tran is designed to work with the most complex code bases, so you have the ability to generate multiple tests per object. And for tables and views, you can just click one button to create tests for all of the objects. And I'll go into much more details in very specific videos tied to the testing framework that's going to come later.